Welcome to the Michael Paris Podcast. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Michael Paris Podcast. Today's guest is Dana Silvestri. For those who don't know, Dana Silvestri is an entrepreneur, coach, consultant, traveler, and digital marketer. Within just 2 years, Dana founded 2 six-figure coaching and consulting businesses, helping online coaches and entrepreneurs grow to 6-7 figures using strategies coined such as the paradigm shift and hyperinflation marketing. He wasn't always social and confident though. As a kid, Dana had speaking and learning disabilities, unable to find his place in the world. So much so, he was kicked out of college and arrested 5 times. Today, Dana is speaking on stages, working with industry leaders such as Bob Proctor, helping others take control of their financial future, developing their mindset, and living a life of freedom, achievement, and fulfillment. Dana Silvestri, thanks so much for coming on board and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mikey. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So the first thing I want to dive into is your mindset, because we see such a contrast of where you were and where you became. The real gold is kind of how you carved your mindset to get from one place to another. So why don't we go all the way back to your childhood? Let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, so first off, mindset is always a work in progress, right? So anyone that says, oh, I don't need to work on mindset, they just don't understand fully what it is. So it's not just positive or negative mindset. We'll talk about that throughout the conversation here. My childhood, grew up in a town, Wakefield, Massachusetts, 20 minutes north of Boston. I was super shy. Like I couldn't even look at people in the eyes. I always felt super uncomfortable around other people. I played sports growing up, but even like I would play baseball and I'd be so focused, not even on like hitting the ball. I'd be like, who's watching? Is that girl in the stands? Is my family watching?
Wow.
And it would really consume my body. And at this time, I just thought everyone experienced these things. You know, you kind of experience things and you assume that's what everyone's experiencing. Obviously, fast forward way later, that's not the case. But I struggled with these things, self-image concepts, just confidence overall, and just really growing up with that. So I don't know where that came from. It may came from I love my parents, but maybe criticism. So I think a lot of things that the ways that we grow up could be stemmed either obviously genetically or within our environment. That's the whole topic of conversation. So one of my parents always was criticizing and, you know, just trying to help do better in this, you know, why
Right.
would you do that? But I think it definitely inspired me to achieve. And that's the thing with entrepreneurs, they're so achieving, but we'll talk about that throughout the conversation too. You want to have
Right.
fulfillment and achievement, which a lot of people don't achieve in their careers. But anyway, so then age 12 and stuff, it was interesting. I don't know how I got into the entrepreneur mindset. But at age 12, obviously you remember MySpace. I had a MySpace
Right.
business page and it was called my name's Dana Silvestri. It was called Young D Sil's Biz. I
Right.
think I liked like rappers and hip hop, you know, like Lil Wayne, and they
Right.
called themselves. So I was just like Young Dana Silvestri's Biz. And on there, it wasn't the smartest thing at the time, but as a 12-year-old, I would post like I would take like intakes on like comments of people like that wanted certain candies and stuff. I would go buy them and flip them. And then also, believe it or not, people were like smoking cigars in my town at like age 14. And I was the only one that could not get ID'd. So I was a
Hmm.
14-year-old walking into a place to buy cigars and people would buy them off me. And the demand was there. So I didn't know at the time, but I could find a demand in the market and kind of fulfill it. Obviously cigars aren't good for people, but I didn't know that.
Right.
So I went on that journey. High school was more of like flipping TVs. Like I'd find TVs on Craigslist, you know, those huge, not flat screens, but the projector TVs.
Right.
People around the suburbs that didn't want it anymore, they were moving, they just posted for free, come pick it up. Then I would go on there, sell it for $300, $400. You know, I'm 16 years old. That was like,
Very
yeah,
Gary Vaynerchuk style.
yeah, like Gary
Right.
V,
Right.
but I had no idea about I didn't even know what I was doing. I just was like, okay, find demand, what people need, earn money. So that was kind of that process there. Also young and it's interesting. I wouldn't call myself a troublemaker, but I think one of my values was adventure.
Right. You
And
just didn't know how to express yourself in the world.
yes,
So,
yeah, I didn't know
right.
how to express myself. And it came
Right.
through like partying and fast forward in high school, I started like partying at age 16, partying, getting in trouble and stuff like that. But you can see that these are like qualities, I guess, as of an entrepreneur or someone. So it's like you just need to fill these values, I think, with something. With business
Right.
travel now does, which is interesting.
Right. It's just, well, there's so much to unpack there. First and foremost, I think a lot of people struggle with expressing themselves in social issues as a kid. And it's always really nice to see someone come out of it. And unfortunately, our parents, you generally mean the best for us, but I think success in the world really comes from how you strive within your environment. And environments change so dramatically from generation to generation, especially with the growth of technology, and social norms have dramatically changed. So often, our parents want the best of us, but what worked for them and their generation is more of like it hinders us in our current generation. And sometimes it takes us a while to realize, because we look at our parents as just these figures who know everything. Anyone who's older just kind of understands life a million times better than us. And as we grow up, we realize that's not entirely the case. So I find that fascinating. If you had to look back, would you say there's any specific moment, like an epiphany, a moment of truth and realization that you said, hey, listen, actually, people out there aren't so much better than me. They aren't so much different than me. That's kind of like that where that confidence comes from, to be like, oh, there's no reason why I should be so scared what other people think. Do you have any moment like that you can look back and remember?
Yeah, many moments. Specifically, it was, so I went the path anyways. I got in some trouble throughout, when I was younger, but I went to college. I got my degree, business administration marketing, but it was more of like a social thing in college, honestly. I mean, I did well, but again, there was more of just like meeting people and having freedom like that. It's like you're like kind of on vacation and you just go to class and stuff. Anyone that went, and then I got my first job, and I think that's when, about not 2 weeks, but maybe a couple months into my first job, I was like, it just didn't make sense to me, because now like my whole life led to that point, and everyone's like, go get your college degree, go get
Right.
your job. And I was like, I can't do this until I'm 65 years old. Like I couldn't wrap my head around, and the job I was at, I was getting paid not a lot of money, working 60 hours a week. So like I started to just have these thoughts of like, what if I could do something myself? If I'm gonna be working this hard, why wouldn't I just create something myself? And then also like freedom
Right.
wise, like I'm big into, you call me a spiritual person if you want, but I believe in something bigger than us. I'm like, there's no way I was born to be in to sit in this cubicle. This is pre-COVID.
Right.
So you can't even get a remote job at this point. I can't even get a day off if I have a fever. They make you come to work and drive in the snow.
Yeah.
So I started to, at this point, I started to find people online that were entrepreneurs. And I realized, in books and
Wow.
audibles, I realized that they're thinking differently than the traditional person that was working for someone else, or where I was. And
Right.
that's what caused a little bit of conflict.
Very interesting. Yeah, you mentioned the working from a cubicle. I very much resonate with that story, and the way I see it is, I feel like a lot of people are paid to forget about their dreams, and it's just like, how much are you willing to get paid to pursue someone else's empire and work in a cubicle rather than build your own? And yeah, and I think, it's just like the things that we think are our weakest aspects as a children, we find that when we can harness them correctly, they're in fact our strongest aspects. The fact that
Mm,
you were a troublemaker, you were told that, you got to be better, you got to be disciplined, and that is great, and that's certainly true. But it's that hunger to do things on your own terms, it's that hunger to be explorative, that I think when you found a way to harness that, you're like, whoa, this actually works. And it's amazing, because it is what the world wants, and it does appeal to that inner me. And I'm glad you figured out to make it work. If you And we're going to start talking about what you do in just a moment, because that's quite fascinating as well. But
right.
if you had to give advice to someone who's in a similar situation to you, or your former self, like, what would, like, the most important piece of advice be?
Well, if there's so many former selves, the younger self, the 9 to 5 Dana, the Dana starting his business 3 years ago and struggling through that, and then the 6 months Dana. Um, so I'll do my best here.
The Dana that least fits in with the world around
Okay.
him.
Okay. I would actually, like you just referenced, I would start to really focus on your mindset and to focus on your gifts. Like that's a gift to not fit in.
Right.
And if you don't fulfill that, other people use, movies, food, drugs to fulfill
Mm.
that, to like forget about what they really want to do. So I would say start to study yourself, because every human is an expression of each other. We just have different behaviors. We have different upbringings and stuff. So if you can understand yourself more, who you are, what you want, create a vision for your life, then you're going to know how to behave. You're going to be able to shift your identity a little bit, be consistent with that, and get on your path. Like there's not many that I know that, like, multi-millionaire success stories overnight that are doing it in a way that's long term, right? So I would
Right.
focus just taking on that step every day, because even when I was in that position, I was like, I'm lost, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just said, what's that one thing that I can do today? And then the compound effect will kick in a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and you'll just be like, whoa, what happened? And people around you will be like, what happened? But
Right.
don't even focus on other people. Focus on you, learn more about yourself. Like, I mapped out a whole vision for my life when I was in a 9 to 5, and it was ridiculous. It was like with no limitations, traveling the world, having an online business back in 2017, right? And I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I'm like living that now. So it's a process and it
Right.
works. But that's the first step. And then the second thing, Mikey, would be to surround yourself with other people that are either a step
Right.
ahead of you or doing that, because you're going to think you're nuts. Like, you're going to be, people aren't going to listen to you. That's ridiculous. Because think about it. If you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you are one now, majority of people are not, right? Like, what is it?
Right.
1 to 5% or 3%? I don't know. Like,
Right.
majority. So that means out of 100 people that you come across, minority of people you're going to relate to. So you need to, what I did is I found those groups of people online specifically to begin. And then I was able, once I started to get my income up and grow my business, I was able to relocate to the specific areas, which I kind of travel around now. So plain and simple, learn about yourself,
Right.
man. Study books. People, if you want to be happy, study books about happiness. I think Jim Rohn says that. If you want to be wealthy, study books about wealth. Like, there's literally books that are written, there's programs. Educate yourself, self-educate
Right.
yourself.
Right. So yeah, I mean that's just a great answer. So just to recap what you're saying here, the first thing is, and for the first point you mentioned, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is just be comfortable with veering off the well-worn path. And that's like precisely what you're describing is confidence. Because people will tell you, even if people have your best interests in mind, they tell you what generally works best for them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that's what works best for you. And you mentioned it yourself. You know yourself, you know your characteristics. And if what makes you happy doesn't necessarily be, or if your drive in a specific direction doesn't necessarily, it doesn't feel accepted by those around you, I think what you're saying is you should become confident to continue pursuing that, because eventually you find a way to make it work. And when you find a way to make it work and you truly love what you do, that's your highway towards success. And onto your second point, what I found really interesting
Right.
is it kind of feels like you're describing you should always feel like you're the smallest person in the room. You always want to be around people who are doing incredibly great things. So you always have somewhere to look up, someone to look up to, because being number one at whatever capacity, you might, whatever environment you might be operating in, the moment you're at the very top, you kind of feel you don't have that pressure to continue pushing upwards. Usually these fighters who work so hard and they make it to the top and they're the champions, that's usually their weakest point, because they go, oh, I've made it to the top. And then you have someone below them is, those are the ones who are the biggest threats, because they still have something to climb up towards. So to recap, I strongly agree, constantly surrounding with yourselves with people who you look up to, people doing incredible work, is another aspect towards your pathway towards success. Now, Dana, let's dive right into what you specifically do. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your companies, and what makes you different than other people doing similar work?
Yes. So two major companies right now at this moment. One is more of a coaching, and I have mentorship. If you know Bob Proctor, if you know the book Think and Grow
Yeah.
Rich, I didn't in 2020. I didn't know how to do a business. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know sales. So 3 years ago, at the time of this recording, he doesn't specialize in that, but he specializes in what we just talked about, like mindset, habits, your self-image, using your mindset, your memory, your intuition, your imagination, these mental faculties that we have that no other creatures have, that entrepreneurs, or not just entrepreneurs, anybody, humans can use, but none of us do use them the right way. So how to shift your mind that way, which is called a paradigm shift. So a paradigm is a mental program that controls 95% of everything that you do, your habits, the amount of money you earn, how you speak, and you can actually shift that. So once you
Nice.
shift your thinking is the first step. So that's like, I see it as like 95% of your success. And then strategy,
It's all internal.
yeah, it's all internal, which most people don't get that. They think the mindset's positive or negative in that sense. So anyways, I didn't have a program. I didn't have that experience. I was just helping a few people in early 2020 and making money online. And I came across Bob Proctor, his company. Long story short, I won a sales contest when I didn't know anything about sales. That's another story. And I ended up having a conversation with Bob, and keep in mind, he's now passed away now. God bless him. But to talk to this guy, like for him to coach you one time a month for an hour is like 250 grand for 6 months. It's like ridiculous. It's basically impossible to talk to him. And I won a contest. And then he kind of asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want to learn. I want to be connected with you guys. I want to learn your material.
Wait, you won a contest, so that's how you got in touch with him?
Yeah.
And that propelled your life forward? That's incredible.
It's much longer, but I know we have limited time. So
yeah, that's
2020,
wonderful.
I joined the Bob Proctor coaching. It's like $8,000 or something. And I printed out a photo of me and Bob because he said to do this and like imagine it. And I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like the whole law of attraction thing. I didn't really understand it. Right. And 8 months later, I was literally on a call with the guy, and I was 26 years old, and he started his business at 26. So like he actually loved me. He's like, you're going to be so successful. And I don't know. And then eventually I just went into partnership with him, which meant I was able to use speed lapse myself, like get mentorship under him and his company by using his programs and coaching people and selling those. So that I brought that to 6 figures. So that's one of my businesses. I still do that. And that's proven 60 years he was in business. I'm very passionate about that because trust me, I have another program that's more strategy, and without the mindset, no one will do the strategies. Like it just doesn't happen. So one of my businesses, it's called the Paradigm Shift, and it's helping entrepreneurs or really anyone shift their mindsets, their habits, their self-image, their attitude, the core, the subconscious, right? And this isn't voodoo or what they call it, woo-woo stuff. This is all like based on science. So that's one of my businesses. The other one, out of that, I created that into a 6-figure business, I think in a year and a half or something. I worked really hard on it. And then people started to see my content online on social media, and they're like, hey, can you help me with marketing? Can you help me do what you did? And like, just like as I was younger, I was like, oh my gosh, like if people are asking me this, and I kept doing like calls with people for not even getting paid, I was like, I might as well create something that fills that gap, right? So I created another business that's more based on what I did. So like so many coaches out there, they're like, what is it, coaching coaches, and this is like, I actually created a mindset. I mean, I didn't create the program, but I sold that and created a business that way, learned these strategies. And then I went in and created another business that's more, it's still mindset the first, but it's the tools. It's something I call hyper attraction marketing, which is, it's you, and this is the big issue with social media, people posting things, you don't know what's real or not, right? It's you actually going and doing things, cool things that break you through fear, and just posting about it. Like if I go for, even if it's just like going on a walk and and
that truly resonates with people, because that's like, wow, I wish I had that courage to do that. And
yeah,
that's how you create that. That's beautiful.
That's what I teach my clients too, is and you don't need to, like I was living in Bali, you don't need to live in Bali to do that. You can go for a walk down the street, you can go to the lake, you can go to the gym, and it's literally, it keeps you accountable. And then you're actually authentic, and people pick that up nowadays. So it's hyper attraction marketing. So it's combining the paradigm shift with organic marketing. And then also high ticket sales, creating courses, and fulfilling on that, which is huge. So it's very the A to Z on the strategy side is the second business.
Yeah, it sounds like Bob passed the baton of knowledge to you, and you break up your strategy into 2 steps. When it looks like you first set the foundation, right? It's like a vessel, so you can actually accept the technical process that follows. So first is kind of getting your mindset in the right place. And then you kind of go ahead and say, hey, here's the theory, and here's how you actually make the money. And once you have that in place, it just kind of flows. That's incredible. Where do you, what's your plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It's a good one, because it's tough even to think about next month or next week. So I'm basically, I have at this point of the recording, I don't have much material things. I think everybody should be rich and have all the material things they want, but they shouldn't have an identity created around it, right? I think, like you said earlier, it needs to be internal, and it's kind of just added in on top of that, right? So right now I'm in a phase of, like, I just did a backpacking trip to North Africa. It was nuts. And then I lived in Bali for 5 months, and I learned all about letting go. So I think we're all a reflection of our business, the CEOs or the creators, right? So I'm constantly working on myself. That's just the phase I'm in right now. Business wise, and it's funny because I was very shy. I hated speaking. Like, that was a belief I had. Like, now I love it for some reason. Like, that's just a shift. Like, I couldn't even get on stage. I wouldn't do it. But then now one of my goals is to get more into the speaking business and travel the world while I'm doing that. That's one. Travel blogging, because it's like, if you're going to be traveling anyways, you might as well provide value that way. It's another business. And then I want to get more into real estate. But the big thing here is helping people with the coaching consulting. Keep doing that. combine that with the speaking, travel, blogging, and real estate is like the next, I would say,
You're
5 years or
all
so.
over the place. You sound so passionate about what you do. It's incredible, and I like it. You come off as someone who's very calculated about making the most out of every single moment, because it's just like sometimes people stay hyper focused, which is truly, truly great. You seem a bit more scatter-minded in a very productive way. You can kind of remind me of myself a little bit in the sense that it's really hard for me to focus on a single task. So I've kind of learned to master trying to do as much as possible. And you mentioned also traveling, which I found interesting. A lot of people from the outside find that the most appealing part of like your lifestyle. They look at you, they look on social media, they see that you're traveling the world, and they go, "Oh man, that's so cool." But the truth is you do what you love doing. You work and you're productive and you're hardworking. You're not, sitting on the beach, just drinking it up and doing nothing and being on vacation. In fact, I feel like, and I'm just judging you here, but I feel like if you wouldn't enjoy that whatsoever. And perhaps maybe why you travel so much is because it keeps the mind excited when you're constantly exposed to new places. There's so much more to explore, and it taps into that deep need for exploration and curiosity that you have.
Right. I mean, that's a big part. And what Bob taught me too is awareness. If you can boost your awareness, and people say consciousness, whatever it is, right?
Right.
If you can boost knowing more, the way to do it is to get out there and do it. Like to go travel to Bali for 5 months, not know anyone. And trust me, it's so
Yeah.
slow there. And I'm not the one. The first 2 months there was challenging. People were like, how is it challenging being in an island? And I'm like, well, I'm running a business out here. There's 12 to 15 hour time difference, doing organic marketing and sales calls, doing calls at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I try, you see some of my posts. I do my best to keep it real,
Right. You
yeah.
become so confident with fighting the skeletons in your closet that you're almost like addicted to that process, where you constantly now put yourself in situations that used to be hyper scared about when you were younger. Am I onto something here? Is there something deep going on where like the things that scared you the most are the things you like doing the most now?
You're right.
It's a
I mean,
thrill.
that's
It's like a real,
that's the paradigm shift, is to really, I guess, reverse that. So you associate fear with excitement.
right.
Right.
I love
Right.
that.
That's what it is. So before, like, speaking was fearful, travel was fearful. And then you change it basically in your mind first, right? You change it on the subconscious level. You can
Right.
use, there's all strategies we can get into. And then the doing, which people forget, right? To go out there and put yourself, like, do the stand-up comedy, do the improv comedy. I was terrified to do that stuff. And you just work that courage muscle, and then you get a thrill out of it. But there is a negative side to it, is when you, like, right now I'm back in my hometown, visit my family for a couple weeks, and now things are starting to get boring again. And I'm like, oh geez.
That's the problem with you, Dana. It's almost like a drug. You're gonna have to find stronger and stronger ways to keep
Oh
that thrill
geez.
going. It's just kind of scary to wonder where it might end up, but I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I think you've got a beautiful mind, and I very much appreciate your curiosity, and I can understand why people would be so attracted to your energy, because it is very welcoming, it's genuine, and it comes from a place that many people can relate. Because a lot of us when we're younger, we struggle with a lot of the things you've struggled with, and a lot of us haven't overcome them yet. So when we see
Right.
someone like you who's so extroverted and so confident, it's just like we're curious to learn more. So I admire, and on a personal level, we've spoken for already 2 years now. And even just watching you online in the past 2 years is quite amazing to see how far you've come. So my hat goes off to you, Dana. And I, I think a lot of our listeners have a lot to appreciate what you do, and I look forward to following you more online. Um, where can people follow you?
First off, I appreciate it, because I know you were kind of following from the beginning of my journey. So people can follow me. Well, primarily Facebook is probably my biggest platform for content stuff. Dana Silvestri. Instagram, the Dana Silvestri, and then my website's thedanasilvestri.com. So anywhere on social media. I have plenty of content coming out. Like what we just discussed, I'm kind of just sharing my story, and my goal is just to put as much value into my posts to help other people, and just to help other people. And even Bob Proctor's taught me about these universal laws, like the law of cause and effect, is like karma, like what you put out comes back, and no expectations. So I would say, if you're listening, I would study into those things. Even maybe look up Bob, look up my content, and Mikey. I appreciate it, because I really appreciate that, because it's sometimes I forget to think about
Right.
the wins I've had. It's like
Right.
everything's happened so fast, and you're probably relate to that. Sometimes we forget to look back and be like, wow, I made it. I've
Right.
done this much. I've made it this far, and I've helped this many people.
Yeah, and just to add to what you're saying there, as someone myself who had like one of the strongest diagnoses, like I was on the strongest prescription of Ritalin, I had aggressive ADHD, and sometimes you forget what a challenge it was. But it's important that you try to remember, because not just for yourself, but so that other people who weren't as fortunate as you are to find a way out can definitely benefit from some of your wisdom. So thank you so much, Dana, for taking the time to share your thoughts and expertise.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great.